What's up, Tailgaters? You're in the booth with Tailgate Nate today. The road to predict all 136 FBS level college football teams is now taking a stop in Ames, Iowa. We are talking about the Iowa State Cyclones out of the Big 12 Conference, a team that made their conference title game last year and a ton of pieces return in order to do it again in 2025. My name is Nate Pope, otherwise known as Tailgate Nate, and I just want to thank you so much for clicking on this video and helping to support the channel. If you'd like to support the channel even further, then please do what it says right below me. Hit that subscribe button and ring the bell while you're at it, because turning on notifications will ensure that you don't miss an upload, especially not one during prediction season, and especially not one of your favorite team. I'm a sports media graduate delving on into the professional world of the industry, and if you want to see all the cool stuff I get to do while still being up to date on what goes on this very YouTube channel, you can give me a follow on social media, Twitter or X, whatever your preference, and Instagram, it's at TailgateNate29. You can even email me, tailgatenate29 at gmail.com. Want to thank you all so much for clicking on this video, helping to support the channel, and interacting with me or the channel in any way that you already do. With all that said and done and out of the way, I know I thank you for clicking on the video twice, but I really am that grateful. Let's talk about the Iowa State Cyclones and your head man, Matt Campbell, for the upcoming 2025 season, the best head coach in Iowa State history, and it is not close. Put them in a Big 12 title position last year, just couldn't get the job done against Arizona State. Well, they want to get the job done this season, but in the wild, wild west of the Big 12, which is a term that gets overused way too much, by the way, I am included in that. Maybe I should slow that train down. We'll think about it. Anyway, in the crazy, crazy Big 12, it's always chaotic. Can Iowa State get back to a conference title game? Well, you're about to find out what I think here in this video. But how do we do preview predictions here on the channel? Well, we are going to go through a roster overview, in which case the offense is going to be right on over here, and the defense right on over here. Offense left, defense right. And at the end of the video, we'll go through the football schedule, give it a game-by-game preview and prediction, and overall this video, we'll tell you what I think about the Cyclones in 2025. Some numbers right down below me before we get to the jargon around me. Returning production numbers are below me. They are, according to ESPN. Do factor in transfer portal additions up to a certain percentage, and then recruiting and transfer portal ranks are according to 24/7 Sports. With all of that out of the way, we flip it on over to your offense with your offensive coordinator, Taylor Mauser, and let's start out with the quarterback position, as we usually do. Most important position on the field, many would argue. Rocco Becht proved he is a star last season. 3,505 yards, 25 touchdowns, and 9 interceptions. Also, does have pretty darn solid escapability. Darn headphone falling out. We'll fix that. It's just so I can hear myself and make sure I sound good for all of you. Anyway, Rocco Becht not only proved he's a star, but also still a star in the making. Again, 3,505 yards, 25 touchdowns, 9 interceptions on around 60% completion percentage. There are a lot of ways in which he can improve. Completion percentage, yep, he can definitely up that. Touchdown to interception ratio, yep, that can definitely see improvement as well. And look, 3,500 yards is already a ton, but with those improvements in completion percentage, and just overall decision making, he's naturally going to see that touchdown interception ratio get better. He's naturally going to get more yards, and I think it's going to be considered, could very well be, again, not me saying giving a prediction, but he very well could be, if everything pans out right, one of the best quarterbacks in college football in 2025. Again, let's see the making of that star take a jump for Rocco Becht this season. His leadership in this offense is already fantastic. Let's up that production value and really have yourself a bona fide star at the quarterback position for the Cyclones. Your top 2 rushers are going to return to this team. They led like this. Carson Hansen, 752 yards and 13 touchdowns last year. Busama is also coming back, 587 yards and 2 touchdowns. And that leaves this running back room pretty fairly intact. Dylan Lee's a redshirt freshman that's going to take over the 3rd string duties, a little bit different than what you saw last season, but overall, with your top 2 rushers back, should still be a pretty solid running back room for Iowa State this upcoming season. However, the wide receiver room is going to get a major overhaul. Jalen Noel and Jaden Higgins. Coincidentally enough, hey, they're both in the NFL. Why not put them both on the same team? That's going to the Houston Texans. Look, if either one of them or both pan out, that leaves a really deep wide receiver room in Houston, and they especially need it with the unfortunate injury that happened to Tank Dell late last season. So again, Noel and Higgins could be playing some pretty big roles with the Houston Texans in the NFL. So again, really, those were your only two guys that caught a lot of meaningful passes for you last year. No one else in this room had over 300 yards receiving, and no other wide receiver had over 150. So there are a ton of guys that are going to need to step up this season, but here's what Noel and Higgins did last season. They were very, very close to each other in terms of production. Noel, 80 catches, 1,194 yards, and 8 touchdowns. Higgins, 87 catches, 1,183 yards, and 9 touchdowns. Look, when you got two guys of that weapons, you really don't need much else to step up, but it would have been really, really nice, right? Bam, you got some really big transfers coming in here to this program, and they are probably going to end up being the next 1-2 duo. So some returners first. Daniel Jackson does come back as a redshirt senior. Eli Green is a redshirt senior transfer that's going to be coming back to this team. Again, transferred into this program a little bit ago. And then some other younger depth behind them. But Chase Sowell and Xavier Townsend are going to end up being the next two guys here. At East Carolina, for the likes of Chase Sowell last season, 678 yards and 3 touchdowns. And then you want to go on over to Xavier Townsend. Not that much production last year, but at UCF in 2023, 325 yards and 3 touchdowns. I know they're going to need to take massive steps up in production themselves. And I think overall, you're not going to see two guys dominate this wide receiver room like you saw last season. I think you're very well going to see a pretty solid overall group. And Rocco Becht, I think, has got a ton of targets to throw to. And again, he's just got to be able to form chemistry with all of those guys. Now, your tight end room, however, hey, you do have some constants here. Both major pieces are going to be returning for you in that 2 tight end system. Gabe Burkle and Ben Bramer both return. They were your top 2 leading receivers out of the tight end room, but you have some more returners. Tyler Moore, Trip Walsh, and a couple other names that'll be returning onto this tight end room. 2 well-experienced offensive line starters are gone off of this offensive line, so very big blows there. But left guard is going to be the absolute biggest question mark for this Iowa State defense. Overall, should still end up being a very, very solid offensive line. Doesn't see any transfers come in, so it really is going to provide, or I should say not provide, it is really going to rely on the returning starters to provide that sort of lift and experience and be able to coach up some of the younger guys that are going to be filling into that position. But left guard, again, biggest question mark because it's going to probably end up being the youngest position out there. Redshirt senior, junior, redshirt senior are the rest of the offensive line positions, according to ourlads.com. Trevor Burr is stepping in there right now as a redshirt sophomore. So again, plenty of big question marks there, but you still do have some solid experience back in that room overall. Again, an offensive unit that if Rocco Becht takes that next step in his level and becomes not just a star in the making or a guy that maybe you can consider on the border. No, if he is, bam, a star, 3,500 yards, 35 touchdowns, 6 or less picks, 70% completion percentage. Actually, that might be a little high. 65% completion percentage, we'll say. This Iowa State offense has a lot coming back. I think those 2 pieces in the wide receiver room will work out well. Tight ends are well. I think offensive line will be fine. Could be another really good offense for the Cyclones this year. Let's talk about this defense. John Heacock is your defensive coordinator, and the ability to generate pressure and player development are going to, I think, be big focuses of this Iowa State defense this year. And I'll explain why here. It's because a lot of your top-end talent is going to be leaving, especially on this defensive front. Your top 3 tacklers in the defensive line room are going to leave. That's guys by the name of Joey Peterson. He was your leading tackler on the defensive front. He is going to no longer here be on this unit, so no more of him. You're also going to be losing Tyler Onyedim. And that's because Onyedim entered the portal. He is now over with the Texas A&M Aggies. And then you're also going to be losing J.R. Singleton, who is now with the NFL Seattle Seahawks. So you are losing some 3, again, really big, solid guys up there, but solid talent is going to come back, and 2 transfers are going to enter to fill the needs. This could end up being a fairly fairly shallow defensive line room, though. And I think the depth is going to really be tested on the defensive line this year. Some of those returners, Dominique Orange, you're going to have Zamir Hawk back. Ikenna Eziogu. Hopefully, I'm saying that name right. And then again, those two transfers playing the Leo position here, combination defensive lineman and linebacker, specifically off the edge. Von Troy Malone and Cannon Butler, two very experienced pieces, come in for the defensive line unit. Two big linebacker pieces are going to be transferring out here of this team. And again, really, really big guys. Jacob Ellis is gone, and Jack Sadowski, a really late transfer, but he is off to Northwestern. However, Jacob Ellis is going to be the big loss there. 41 tackles and a sack for him last year. Sadowski did also have a sack with 29 tackles a season ago. However, Cooper Ebel, he is going to be returning to this linebacking unit, was the leading tackler among linebackers last season with 69 of them. Nice. And again, just a lot of other talent going to be coming back. Troop of guys that are playing in probably much bigger roles than they are used to seeing. Again, no Jack Sadowski, the late addition to the transfer portal. Ebel, or I should say Cooper Ebel, I think is going to end up being a very nice piece for him, much like he was last season. Caleb Bacon is coming back. You're going to have Will McLaughlin, and then just a ton of other really good young pieces that hopefully can step up and play really big roles in the linebacking position. Defensive back leaders Bo Frailer and Malik Verdon are both gone, and there's no understating how big those two pieces were in this defensive backfield. They were your top two leading tacklers as defensive backs last year. Frailer with 84 tackles, and I even spelled the name wrong. Apologies. It's an E, not an A. Bo Frailer, not Frailer. Easily mixed up. Anyway, 84 tackles for him, 4 pass defended, 2 interceptions, and then Verdon 75 tackles, 5 pass defended, and 1 interception. So losing those two guys, really big deal for this defensive backfield. Again, they were top two tacklers, so it's big for the defense as a whole, but familiar faces Jeremiah Cooper and Jontez Williams return, and then transfers are going to add there as well. I believe specifically a transfer is going to add, but the likes of Cooper, 8 pass defended, 2 interceptions, while being a top 5 tackler. Jontez Williams led the team in interceptions with 4 of them last season, also was a top 5 tackler. So yeah, in my opinion, you lose your two biggest pieces, but you still have, again, some solid talent returning around the two names that I already said. And then Trey Bell is the lone transfer that is seen and probably will end up making a pretty solid impact for this team to play cornerback for this defensive back unit. Special teams are all back on board because kickers are people too. Let's show them some love, call them out by name. Tyler Perkins coming back to punt, and then Kyle Conrady will be back to be your place kicker this season. All in all, with this Iowa State team, again, if the offense can take some next steps while filling in that gap, really good stuff. If the defense can, again, fill in some of the massive losses that they have and that depth steps up, it becomes a little bit of a question mark, but the talent is still there. How does the football schedule look? And mainly, can Iowa State survive the chaos of the Big 12? Well, you're about to find that out right now, because here is the Iowa State Cyclone 2025 football schedule. But before we dive on into this and give it a prediction, let's look right down below there at some numbers courtesy of FanDuel. No, not me telling you to go place your money. Again, do what you want with your money. They are current as of recording this video and subject to change, and it just gives you a nice, just something to compare sort of Iowa State to, and not necessarily an expectation. Context, that's the word that I was looking for. Gives you some context to how good the odds makers think Iowa State is going to be this upcoming season. Plus 1,200 odds to win the conference really doesn't seem that steep, but there are a lot of teams in the Big 12 with some pretty short odds to win the conference, and you would think Iowa State would be towards the top of that list. As of recording this video, guys, Iowa State is sitting, I believe, 8th. Yeah, 8th in the Big 12 to win the conference after making the conference title game last year. Oh, that's got to fire some Cyclone fans up. And then, yes, I would agree with this one. A lot would have to go right to win the national championship, according to Vegas, plus 24,000 odds. They are one of the few teams to play in week 0. They are playing the Kansas State Wildcats in a Big 12 showdown in Ireland. I think this is going to be an absolutely phenomenal game, and whichever team is able to win this one, I think has themselves a pretty good shot to carry that momentum through, again, the first few weeks, if not for the rest of the season, and have a real good look at making the Big 12 championship game, because getting a leg up on already one of the better teams in the conference, which I believe Kansas State and Iowa State both are, is going to be really, really huge. Now, there were some really good moments and not so good moments with Avery Johnson last season. However, the talent around him is still going to be really good. Dylan Edwards and Joe Jackson, as well as a Nebraska transfer and Gabe Irvin, going to highlight that running back room. Jace Brown returns with a slew of transfers, really talented ones surrounding him offensively, and the defense should get better this year, specifically in that secondary where they did add in a couple of transfer portal pieces to help out what a lot of Wildcat fans felt like was a liable secondary last season. I do think that Avery Johnson's going to take that next step this season. And I think overall, Kansas State has just got a little bit more for me. Again, this really is a 50-50 coin flip game. I have battled back and forth with this one for so long. If you've seen my Kansas State video, though, you already know what my prediction is for this one, for this game. Again, I went back and forth with this one forever, but I finally landed on Kansas State. I just feel like overall, Kansas State is having to replace a little bit less, and even the stuff that they're having to replace, especially offensively, they've been able to get pieces in there. And honestly, it feels like pretty similar situations, right? The two teams are losing a lot of wide receiver production. They're going to have to replace that. I think Kansas State's got a little bit more proven talent as of right now. That very well could change by the end of the season. And I overall think that this Kansas State defensive front will be able to, again, find those holes and weaknesses, while Iowa State might still be trying to shuffle in some offensive linemen. Don't get me wrong, this is going to be a fantastic, I think could end up being a back and forth battle, but I think Chris Kleiman and the Wildcats are going to be able to pull this one out across the pond, and Kansas State gets the win in Ireland. So is that going to spell necessary doom, as, again, Iowa State now has to carry that momentum on for the rest of the season? We've seen what happens when teams lose in Ireland. Florida State did it last year. Nebraska did it a few years ago. Is Iowa State going to follow that same pattern? Well, if they are, it's not going to happen right away, because they are going to beat South Dakota, and I think they're going to beat their rival in Iowa as well. Now, Iowa's going to be a very interesting case study this year. A lot of star power leaving defensively, and then offensively, Caleb Johnson, that excellent running back, is off to the pros as well. Quarterback situation has never really been that great at Iowa, and they didn't hit with Cade McNamara. They should hit this year. Mark Gronowski's coming over from South Dakota State as an FCS champion twice. And again, he brings some solid experience. I just don't know that there are the necessary pieces around Mark Gronowski to fully be able to utilize what he wants to do. On top of the fact that, again, the Iowa State has to play pretty solid defense, and usually this game comes down to a special teams mistake, or Cyhawk games are always really, really crazy. I think this one's going to be no different, but I trust the pieces that Iowa State has offensively a little bit more, and I know the Iowa defense is going to play really, really tough this season, but I do think overall the Cyclones are the more talented team, and they're at home in Ames. So give me that win for the Iowa State Cyclones, and then on the road against Arkansas State, should be able to beat Butch Jones's group there. Hey, Arkansas State had a really good season out of the Sun Belt last year, so don't discount them. A lot of team. They could be one of the better teams in the Sun Belt this year. I do not think they're going to pull off this upset, though, against Iowa State. Again, another case, though, where you see a Power 4 team go on the road and play a Group of 5 team. So, since Iowa State played in Week 0, they actually get 3 bye weeks instead of 2, like every other, or I should say most other teams this year, and they get one of them right here before the game against Arizona. Now, I think the Wildcats are going to be a sneaky team this year. I really, really do. I like a lot of the pieces that Arizona's brought in through the portal. I know last year was a disaster, but I think Brent Brennan is a guy that gets the most out of his players. He's returning Noah Fafita. Ismail Mahdi was a star running back at Texas State. He'll be a star over with Arizona at the next level in the Power 4. Lots of really good wide receiver transfers, and the defense returns a ton of experience and probably is going to get better this upcoming season. However, I don't think it gets better enough to lock down everything that this Iowa State offense can throw at you, and I think physicality level could be a big thing here, as I think the Cyclone offensive line starts to get it figured out by now. The defensive front, even though it could be slim, should still be very disruptive, and Iowa State gets that win against Arizona. I also think they're going to get the win against Cincinnati. This is a Cincinnati team that, again, if you want to pick a team that can fall weakness to the harsh reality of playing in the Big 12 Conference, this very well could be your team. Hey, Brendan Sorsby does come back, a lot of other talented pieces, but again, there's not really much else on the Cincinnati team to get excited about, except for really good defensive linemen in Dante Corleone. He's probably going to be one of the most disruptive pieces across the entire country this year, but Iowa State is going to get that win on the road against Cincinnati. However, then you have this one against Colorado. And I know, no Shador Sanders, no Travis Hunter, but it's still Coach Prime and Colorado. He's going to be able to fill those gaps and be able to fill those roles. Probably not Travis Hunter, but in terms of the quarterback position for this Colorado team, you got two excellent options. Caden Salter is transferring in from Liberty, and then Julian Lewis is a stupidly talented freshman that enters this room. I think Colorado's going to wind up being relatively okay this season, and they're going to pull off some pretty significant wins and upsets, because also look at the conference we're in. This is the Big 12. The unpredictable is very predictable within this conference, and yet unpredictable at the same time. That's why they call it unpredictable. Maybe the unpredictable happens here. I think Colorado's going to wind up winning this game. Again, quarterback play, and again, just a few bounces of the ball in the Big 12 Conference can go a long way. I think Colorado pulls off the upset here before Iowa State's second bye week. So now you're already looking at two conference losses, which, again, let's be real, in the Big 12 Conference doesn't put you out of the conference title race. Let's get on into this one against BYU. Quite simply put, it's really interesting what you make of BYU this season. How seriously does the university take the Jake Retzlaff situation? Probably more seriously than others, knowing that BYU is owned by a Catholic, or I should say not Catholic, a Christian church. It's the uh, Latter-day Saints. There you go. So again, an issue that's going on with Jake Retzlaff, I think it's going to be magnified at a program like BYU. There's still a lot of other solid talent, and Kalani Sitake is a very good head coach, but without Jake Retzlaff, there's not much other proven power in that quarterback room, and I think Iowa State's going to be able to get that win, and I even think they get it with Jake Retzlaff. Will it be harder if they do? Yes, but give me Rocco Becht over Jake Retzlaff any day of the week. I'll go ahead and take the Cyclones in that one. I'm also taking the Cyclones against the Sun Devils. Now, this is a Sun Devil team that I like a lot. Jordan Tyson comes back at wide receiver, and if he stays healthy, he'll be a dynamic weapon. Sam Levitt should take that next step. Arizona State Sun Devil defense should see some improvements from what it did this season. And again, out of the two teams that made the Big 12 Conference, I give Arizona State plenty, not necessarily plenty more room, but I favor them a lot more to make it back to the Big 12 championship game than I do Iowa State. That being said, I think Iowa State gets their revenge here. Rocco Becht and company make a little bit too many plays on that defense, and the Cyclones get the win. Run through the rest of the schedule here pretty quickly. It's the Big 12. And chaos is going to happen. But TCU is a team to watch out for, and I think Josh Hoover can really take it to this Iowa State secondary. He's got a lot of good young weapons, a lot of really good experienced weapons on the team as well, some good portal pieces, and I think the TCU defense is going to be pretty capable of forcing some turnovers this year. Could happen in this one, and Iowa State suffers their third loss of the year. But they do win out. Kansas should be a lot better this season, especially if Jalen Daniels stays healthy. But the problem with Kansas has always been defensively being able to defend outside the numbers. That'll be a problem here against Iowa State. And Oklahoma State was a disaster last year. It's going to get better this season. And one of the many coaches in the country you don't count, well, I should say one of the few coaches in the country you don't count out is Mike Gundy. Hey, hopefully he can prove me wrong. I'm counting him out here. Iowa State wins that one, and you move on to 9-3. Still a pretty darn good record, is enough to get in the Big 12 championship game. We'll have to see how chaotic the conference is. However, this is a team that I could see winning a ton of football games this season, especially if Rocco Becht takes that next step and the offensive line is not a big problem, as well as they fill in the gaps defensively. That's my prediction for Iowa State. Let me know what you think in the comment section down below. Sorry this video ran a little bit long, and I'll see all you tomorrow with some more predictions. Remember to play hard but tailgate harder. See you in the next one. Goodbye.